A Birmingham High School football coach killed in a deadly shooting. And this morning, the man charged in that killing waking up behind bars. Parker High School shared this post of Demetrius Beverly. The school says he was an assistant football coach. He was also a former football and baseball player with the Thundering Herd. The school went on to say that Coach Beverly, quote, gave his all to the Thundering Herd on the field and in our community. He was a mentor, a husband, a father, and friend whose impact will live on through the countless lives he touched. DeCorleon Robinson is charged with Beverly's murder. Beverly was found dead at Lakeshore Ridge Apartments Wednesday night.
He was a state champion coach, a mentor to hundreds of young athletes, a man who spent his life shaping futures in Birmingham. But on a warm August night, his story ended in the most violent way possible. Shot to death inside an apartment bedroom. The accused killer? Not a rival coach, not a stranger, but a 23-year-old man who claims he caught Coach Demetrius Beverly in bed with his girlfriend. The story shocked an entire city. How could a respected coach, admired for his leadership on and off the field, become the victim of a deadly love triangle? And why is the man accused of killing him already walking the streets on bond? Tonight, we break down the life of Coach Demetrius Beverly, the young man accused of pulling the trigger, and the questions haunting Birmingham. Was this a crime of passion or something far more calculated? It was just after 10:30 p.m. on August 13th, 2025, when neighbors at Lakeshore Ridge Apartments dialed 911. Bursts of gunfire shattered the quiet night. When Birmingham police arrived, they found a grisly scene inside a second-floor unit. 40-year-old Coach Demetrius Beverly lay sprawled in a bedroom, shot multiple times. He was pronounced dead on the spot. The apartment door was open. Witnesses described hearing shouting, then a sudden silence before the gunfire. Outside, not far from the entrance, officers spotted a man standing by a car. He didn't run. He didn't fight. That man was identified as 23-year-old DeCorleon Robinson. Police say he was carrying the weapon used in the killing. Neighbors watched in disbelief as he was handcuffed and led away. To many, Robinson was just another young face in Birmingham. But that night, police say, he had just taken the life of a man who had given everything to the city's youth. To understand the weight of this loss, you have to know who Demetrius Beverly was. He wasn't just a football coach. He was a father figure, a mentor, and sometimes the only stable adult in a young man's life. At Parker High School, Beverly took over a struggling program and transformed it into a powerhouse. Under his guidance, the Thundering Herd became state champions, a title that brought pride to a community often overlooked.
Football won their first state championship just last year. The team hopes to win back-to-back titles in honor of...
But ask his players, and most won't talk about trophies. They'll talk about the coach who stayed late to tutor them in math, the man who gave them rides home when their parents couldn't, the voice that demanded they stay out of trouble, even when the streets pulled at them. One former player told local reporters, "Coach Beverly didn't just save my career, he saved my life." Another said, "He taught us that being a man wasn't about football. It was about responsibility." Colleagues describe him as intense but deeply loyal, a man who poured his energy into building not just athletes, but futures.
Anybody that lose their life, I don't care how it happens, but something we gained together as a team this year is going to be together. And it's time, that moment that we are working towards ends out of learning from this experience. And the guys here in the senior class took upon themselves to.
And yet, despite his influence, despite the lives he shaped, Beverly's own story ended not on a football field, but in an apartment bedroom, gunned down in a moment of rage. So who was the young man accused of killing him? 23-year-old DeCorleon Robinson didn't have a lengthy criminal history. Friends describe him as quiet, reserved, someone who mostly kept to himself. He worked odd jobs and lived in Birmingham, staying out of the spotlight, but he had one connection that would prove deadly: his girlfriend. Police say that on the night of August 13th, Robinson walked into her apartment and found Coach Beverly inside. What he saw next remains under investigation, but within moments, Beverly was dead. Robinson didn't flee. He was still at the scene when police arrived, but it was what he carried that made investigators pause. A switch. A small device that turns a handgun into a machine gun. That small piece of metal, illegal to own, transforms an ordinary pistol into a machine gun, capable of firing dozens of bullets in seconds. Police questioned why Robinson would even have such a device. If this was truly a sudden, unplanned act of rage, why was he armed with a weapon designed for rapid, lethal firepower? For investigators, that detail suggested something darker. Maybe this wasn't just a crime of passion. Maybe it was premeditated. The murder of Coach Beverly stunned Birmingham. At Parker High, word spread quickly. Students wept in hallways, players sat in silence in the locker room, staring at the empty chair where Beverly always gave his pregame speeches. Parents filled social media with tributes. One mother wrote, "He treated our boys like they were his own sons. This loss is beyond words." Another posted, "Coach Beverly believed in kids nobody else would." Within days, the community organized a vigil on the football field. Hundreds showed up. Candles flickered across the 50-yard line. Beverly's whistle and cap were placed at midfield, the same spot where he once lifted a championship trophy. Former players returned, some grown men with families of their own, and spoke through tears. One said, "I wouldn't be here today without him. He gave me hope when I had none." The grief wasn't just about a coach. It was about a man who embodied what Birmingham wanted its young people to become: a mentor, a protector, and now a victim. Robinson was charged with murder and possession of an illegal firearm device. With the evidence stacked against him, caught at the scene, armed with the weapon, most assumed he would stay in jail until trial. But in a stunning twist, a judge granted him bond. The news outraged the community. How could a man accused of murdering a beloved coach, armed with a machine gun conversion device, be released? Prosecutors argued Robinson was dangerous. They said the switch device showed intent, and that releasing him put the public at risk. But the defense painted a different picture. They described Robinson as a young man overwhelmed by emotion. They argued this wasn't premeditation, it was a crime of passion, a split-second decision, not a calculated plan. The judge sided with the defense, allowing Robinson to walk free while awaiting trial. For Beverly's family, and for a city already mourning, the ruling felt like betrayal. To them, justice was being delayed. And worse, justice might never be fully delivered. At the heart of the case is one question. What was Robinson's motive? Investigators say he snapped when he found Beverly with his girlfriend. His defense team argues that makes this manslaughter, not murder. That Robinson acted in the heat of passion, without time to think or plan. But prosecutors point to the switch. They argue that device changes everything. A person doesn't casually carry a handgun converted into a machine gun. They say it shows intent, or at the very least, preparation for violence. In Alabama, the difference is everything. A murder conviction could mean life behind bars. A manslaughter conviction might mean a few years in prison, maybe less. For the jury, the decision will come down to this. Was Robinson simply blinded by rage in the heat of the moment? Or did he walk into that apartment ready for bloodshed? This case also highlights a growing problem nationwide: the spread of illegal switches. Federal agents say they're finding them more and more in crime scenes across the country. Just a cheap piece of metal, often bought online, yet capable of turning ordinary handguns into military-style weapons. In 2024, the ATF reported seizing thousands of these devices, some linked to mass shootings, others tied to gang violence. Each one represents a fraction of a much bigger issue: weapons of war hidden in plain sight. But while the gun debate plays out in courtrooms and Congress, Birmingham's focus remains on the human cost. Because this case isn't just about a device, it's about betrayal. It's about jealousy. It's about how one split-second decision, fueled by rage and amplified by firepower, destroyed two lives: Beverly's and Robinson's. At Parker High, life moves forward, but the absence is undeniable. Players wear wristbands etched with Beverly's initials. Before every game, they kneel in prayer at the 50-yard line, the spot where their coach once stood tall, urging them to fight not just for football, but for their futures. Teachers say the school feels emptier. Students glance at Beverly's old office, now dark and quiet. For many, it still doesn't feel real. For Beverly's family, the grief is immeasurable. A man who gave his life to lifting up others was taken in a violent, senseless moment. They now face birthdays, holidays, and graduations without him. And across Birmingham, the question lingers. When Robinson finally goes to trial, will the justice system honor the legacy of a man who spent his life building others up? Or will the outcome leave the community with wounds that never heal? A beloved coach, a mentor, a man who built champions on and off the field, gunned down in a bedroom, a young suspect, free on bond, awaiting trial. Demetris Beverly's story is about dedication, sacrifice, and lives changed forever. But it's also a story about jealousy, rage, and the devastating cost of a single decision. For Birmingham, the trial will decide more than Robinson's fate. It will test whether justice can truly measure the value of a man like Coach Beverly. Do you believe Robinson acted in the heat of passion? Or do you think this was cold-blooded murder? Let me know in the comments.